perspective on his point of view when he comes on the show. Remember, you can call in. Corey, what's the phone number again?
It's 503-991-2838.
Or you can
Gmail at where?
MoxieMedia2016 @gmail.com. You definitely can send in your your questions, comments, anything like that. If you guys want to talk to Doug, the fire crew, if you want to talk to Jeff, these guys are open to your comments and questions and stuff too. Remember, you can text us in at the Moxie line, that same number. But let's talk about, again, fire suppression. That's the biggest thing, and that's, I think, what the scariest thing is that, crashes and wrecks, cars are built for that nowadays. You get into, again, some of these cars that are manufactured, GRT, TRE, Shaw, Victory Circle, Victory Circle, big time. You get into those manufactured cars, and they are actually built to take a crash. Yep. Okay, so now you get into some of these lower divisions, 4Bs, Dwarf cars. Well, now Dwarf cars are fabricated and stuff too, so they take that too. But we just saw a couple of Dwarf cars up at Sunset take a rollover. Marty Holmeson's, his car, brand new car, had a driver take out of it, and it really didn't hurt the car, but it ripped the motor mounts and all that type of stuff out of it. These are smaller tube cars, but they're racing 1190cc Hayabusa motors. They're faster than hell, running on a little tire, open wheel.
Injected motors. I mean, they're
stupid
creating
fast.
power.
I mean, they're retarded. I mean, they're just stupid fast. But you get into these cars, and you're really not protected by the big tubes of the fabricated late models or modifieds. As a fire safety guy, let's talk about what is your first thing when you do see these Dwarf cars, especially when they do come down to Willamette and they're hauling the mail down the straightaway and one takes a tumble. I mean, you're looking at more of an impact with these guys than you are with a bigger car.
It really doesn't affect what I do, exception of, there's more of a mechanism of injury. I'm still going to do the same car, same thing, whether it's a big car or a small car. The only problems I've had is, someone is hurt in the car, having the owner tell us that we cannot touch the car, and that has happened quite a few times where we need to start extricating this guy.
Cut the car open.
We need to cut the car open, and they come up and scream at us and tell us not to touch the car.
Okay, so let's talk about that a little bit. Let's hit on that because, one, you guys are fire safety. That's your job. Okay, me as a car owner, for one, I shouldn't even be on the track. I understand my driver and all that type of stuff.
Right.
But your job is to make sure that, say, Corey's my driver, to make sure he's okay. I'm going to be hysterical anyways because my driver just flipped or whatever the case is, or on fire or whatever, and I'm going to sit there, don't hurt my car, though. Don't cut it open.
It happens all the time.
Okay.
It's no different than a highway accident.
Yeah, so when you get into that situation, what is your responsibility to that?
Well, we try to talk some sense into him.
But, I mean, does the track... Hold on. Does the track, though, tell you, look, I don't care what this person says. I don't care about their car. Your job is fire safety. Safety to make sure that driver's okay. I don't care if you have to cut that car open. They take that risk getting into a race car.
Right.
So do you actually have that? Does Willamette Speedway give you the responsibility to make that decision?
Yes and no.
And I'm not trying to put Willamette on.
I can have anybody escorted out if I need to.
Right, but I'm not trying to put Willamette
From the
Speedway.
situation of a wreck you're talking about.
It has a lot to do with the driver itself and because he's my patient.
Right.
Exactly.
And
that's what I was going to say. Doesn't it?
And he
come
can
back to the
override
first
me.
Responder.
Right.
He can override me. He can say, no, don't touch me. Don't touch my car. And his arm could be laying, outside on the track. And he's like, don't touch me. And as long as he is coherent and answering everything properly, there is not a lot that I can do.
Like a first responder.
Just like a first responder.
But when they pass out, then they become your patient.
That's
And
they
you're in control.
become the patient, right? So when you have a car owner comes in and say the driver is unconscious and stuff and says, "Don't cut my car open," do you have that? Do you have that right? Because I know up at Sunset Speedway, Nikki Gamble has told that fire safety crew, "Hey, that's your job. I don't care what you have to do. Make sure that driver
absolutely.
As long as the patient is allowing us to treat him Yeah. I don't care who's around there.
You can
I'll have
replace
them
a race
removed.
car, man.
Exactly.
Right.
I mean,
And see, that's the thing,
metal.
too, is
And
up
if
there.
it's down to the point of actually having to extricate, we have spent a ton of time looking at race cars and looking at chassis, talking to chassis builders. I think we've even talked to you quite a bit about where we can cut and where we,
Where the best place
where
to
the
cut
best
is.
place to cut where they can repair the car.
Easily,
I don't know how many times we've had to cut a guy out. 3 hours later, he's at the track. Oh yeah, just muscles or whatever.
But now his car's cut up.
Right, and so we try to cut the non-critical bars, and we have a pretty good system down. And I said we've talked to lots of chassis builders and try to figure out the best way. A good one that I remember is Trevor Gleiser when he got T-boned. His cage collapsed on him and literally turned the seat almost sideways in the
That
cockpit.
was a brutal high-speed wreck, with the one you're talking with Bob Boyd.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an
And
ugly
so
wreck. And
I had no qualms about cutting the door clear out of his car, cutting through all the bars, opening that whole thing up. The chassis was junk, and I think Trevor knew that, and I told him that. I was like, dude, there's so much damage here. We have got to cut your car apart. And he's like, do what you got to do. He was.
which is the right attitude to
So-
take,
It
I mean,
is.
It's just a race car.
So, like I was talking, with some of these car owners and car manufacturers and stuff. NASCAR has a deal. If you start looking at their cars, where their steel plates are on their driver's doors, they have holes. A lot of people don't know what those holes are for. Those holes there are for driver extrication, jaws of life, because you cannot take a jaws of life through through steel metal. So that's the reason why those holes are there. Is because then you can sit there and you can put the jaws of life or whatever, and that's where you cut the bars and extricate it from
well,
there.
and that's a problem. Is Jaws of Life won't cut those bars.
Well, a lot of and see now,
Sawzall is what we use,
and that's like with Sunset Speedway. They just had a gentleman, Doug Pirtle, actually bring his mini sprint and sprint car up there because extricating from a bigger car, they understand. It was trying to develop and try to figure out how to extricate out of these mini sprints and basically a smaller cage deal. And they actually do testing up there with their fire safety crew, and they'll put a guy in it, fully contained, all that type of stuff, and either put it on its side or whatever the case is, and extricate that driver, just so they have that extra safety. So when these guys do come, this next weekend we have probably close to 60 mini sprints and micros coming down, all the way from Deming. We have a huge, huge, huge field that's coming this weekend. They wanted to make sure that when they come to that track, even though it's a small bull ring, they're not, doing a ton of, they're not as fast as, as everybody, but it's something that, they just want to be prepared for it. Now, do you guys have a system like that you guys are prepared for?
We actually have a late model chassis that we have made into a extrication car. We can turn it on its side. We can turn it upside down. Practice. It's got. We need to upgrade our seat. The seat's from like the early 2000s, so
Right.
it's before the big containment
Full
seats.
containment started to happen on a lot
Right.
basis.
Right, but I mean, it's got the full cockpit, steering wheel. We have a spot for pedals where we can put your foot underneath the pedals, so you have to work on getting
Your leg out.
Nice.
leg out
Yeah,
from around
nice,
the
yeah.
pedals. And we've taken it around to some of the tracks and had them look at it and told us our philosophy on extrication and stuff. We used it, we probably use it 2 or 3 times a year.
So-
We used to have a sprint car that we had when we did a lot of sprint car stuff.
Right. So let's talk about a little bit about, because your whole team travels, right, to different tracks?
Yeah.
Okay, so when you go to different tracks, and we were just talking off air, there was a track you were talking about, literally you couldn't see the whole backstretch, and you have basically 2 spotters on each end, on turn 2 and going into turn 3. As a first responder, as a safety crew, how important is that to know when something happens and how important it is to get out there?
Well, it's obviously really important because we can't respond to stuff we can't see. I usually spend 30, 40 minutes going, when I show up at a track and I just sit there and look around and decide where's the best place to be. A lot of guys, I don't know how many times I've been to tracks where, they have their, the fire crew has their lawn chairs out, and they're all kicked back, and their turnouts
Seen that
off.
before.
They're not active like you guys are.
Seen that before.
I know myself, and when I have to react, I have to go on instinct. And, it is hard enough for me to grab my helmet right next to me and put it on my head.
Right.
Because all I can see is that accident. I start getting a little bit of that tunnel vision. I've been doing it long enough where I don't get a whole lot of that anymore.
Right.
But I still have to, tell my, the person next to me, helmet. As we're hitting the track or getting to the scene, I want to be as prepared. I mean, we sit in our rigs with our fire suits usually zipped all the way up, gloves on, everything ready. All we have to do is put the helmet on.
Right. So, when you're basically sitting there, trucks are on, ready to go,
Yep.
radio's on, all that type of stuff. Now, do you have a person like at Willamette Speedway? That's a very open track you can see. Do you have personal placements where you guys park?
Yeah, we have one truck facing the backstretch, which can see 2 and turn 2, turn 3. We can see, and then we have another truck facing the opposite direction that can see the front stretch and 4 and 1. Willamette Speedway didn't used to be that way. It used to be a very crowded,
Yes, it did.
hard to see place because a lot of times you'd be sitting down in 3, you couldn't see one.
Yeah, because
they'd
everybody
be running
pitted.
the
Everybody
bottom.
pitted on the infield.
Everybody
and we
pitted
had
on
a
the
wall
infield.
around it. Well,
Yeah.
at one time we did, but
And then if something major happened, you had to be able to get to the track without running 100 people over.
Right, absolutely.
Because everybody's running all around. You're trying to get there, and so is everybody else.
Well, race fans, we actually have a very, very, very special guest on the phone right now. I guess we should just sit there and say hi to this person and have him introduce himself.
Well, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you very much. This is Kenny Wallace, and I got a text from you all today saying that you wanted me to be on your show, and I said, why the hell not? But I knew that you're out there on California type time, and I'm in St. Louis, so it's almost 9 o'clock here. What are you all up to?
Well, Kenny, we're sitting around talking racing, and it's a big safety show. It was kind of spurred a couple of weeks ago by, the Charlie Floyd accident back there at Southern Ohio Speedway, and looking at your wreck just recently. It's something that's been a hot topic in the dirt world, racetrack safety period. And we kind of wanted to get you on the phone and talk to you about your accident and, car construction and maybe some of the safety factors that you put into your racing program.
Well, first and foremost, we all know that, our love and passion for dirt racing is very high. I love dirt racing. And I also understand that there's no money to be made in it for anybody. So nobody makes money in dirt racing. So we cannot rely on the tracks to keep us safe.